Hi everyone, and welcome to our panel on A Writer's Journey. I'm Phoebe Morgan. I'm an editor at HarperCollins UK, and I'm here with my brilliant author Sue Moorcroft and her wonderful literary agent Juliet. Sue, would you like to introduce yourself to the panel?
Hi everybody, I'm Sue Moorcroft and I write seasonal books for HarperCollins, Avon HarperCollins, the wonderful Avon team. You can see here's some of my Christmas books, both in the UK, America and Canada, and I also write summer books. And Juliet's been my agent since I think 2015, and my journey with Avon began in 2016 by going to #1 in the Amazon charts.
Amazing. I remember that. That was a great day. And Juliet, do you want to just say hello to everyone as well?
Hi, I'm Juliet. I'm an agent at Blake Freeman Literary Agency, and I work with a list of about 50 authors and write across all kinds of fiction. So Sue, I've worked with, as she said, for 5 years, and she's on the more commercial end of the fiction that I represent.
Great, thank you. So I thought we could start off with a little bit from you, Sue, about the kind of novels that you write. So as Juliet mentioned, they are commercial and we can see them showcased beautifully behind you. But can you tell us a little bit more about who you are as a writer?
I like writing fairly light fiction. I call it fairly light because it's very readable, accessible, as well as commercial. And for anybody who's not familiar with commercial, we could say popular. In other words, we're aiming to sell a lot. And I like to include real life, very much so. So in Christmas Wishes, for example, Hannah's been swindled out of Hannah's been swindled out of her shop in Stockholm by her rat fink of a boyfriend. And Nico has been dealing with looking after 2 children and his eating disorder, which has kind of come back to get him in a moment of stress. And they both go back home to Middle Dip, the village, to try and build a better life, decide what happens next.
Great, thank you. And what I really love about your writing, Sue, is, as you've said, it is lighthearted to an extent, but it's also very emotionally astute, and you cover some really quite serious themes within the brilliant story. And I think Christmas Wishes is a fantastic example of that, as you've said. I absolutely loved reading it. I think it's your best book yet, and I'm not just saying that. It's a really fantastic novel, and it's a perfect antidote to the challenging times that we're living through.
Even includes some armchair travel because we go to Sweden a couple of times and it's snowy and we've got all the beautiful houses and
yeah, very escapist. And can you tell us a bit about how you signed with Juliet? So Juliet, you mentioned it was 5 years ago, I think you said. So can whoever wants to jump in, how did that first come about?
Well, you start with this, Juliet, because I'm interested from your point of view.
I hope we don't have different stories here. So Sue came to me via my colleague Carol. So Sue and Carol knew each other well through the RNA, the romantic years of going to the same events and conferences. And then we met because Sue wrote to Carol and asked if she might be interested in working with her, even though she knew Carol had a very big kind of full list. And Carol thought that I might be a great match for Sue. So she passed on Sue's manuscript and also some details of what Sue had achieved so far, and a personal recommendation for Sue, just saying she was fantastic and she thoroughly recommended working with her if I wanted to. And I read a book called The 12 Dates of Christmas. And that I really liked. So I was looking for a writer in this area who was writing women who were real, who were going through very authentic dilemmas. I really didn't want a kind of those 90s tropes of women sitting around feeling desperately single, waiting for a man to like run in and scoop them up and solve all their woes. That's really not what I'm about. And what I loved about Sue from the off, main issues going on. So that's where we started. And do you want to take it from there, maybe, Sue?
Well, yeah, I think our stories do match up quite well. I received some disappointing royalties, and rather than just sulking and pouting, I decided it was time for me to get an agent again. I'd had a lovely agent in the past, but one thing and another, personal situation, we parted company, and I'd been on my own for 7 books. And so I emailed Carol Blake, and I think the first paragraph began, "I know you're not taking anybody on, but I'm going to ask you anyway." Because she'd taken somebody else on, I knew, when she wasn't supposed to be taking anybody on. So, you know, what have I got to lose? And to my surprise, rather than coming back with, "Yeah, you're right, I'm not, good luck," she said, "Yeah, you're right, but I'm intrigued. Send me," and it was a list of things she'd like to see, including the book I was writing. And so I did all that and sat back, and first of all, she was ill. And then I had to commit to my old publisher for that particular book I'd sent her. So I sent her a synopsis of a different book, which, as Juliet said, was then called The 12 Dates of Christmas, which I'm really glad that Avon chose a different title, because I think 5 books came out that year called The 12 Dates of Christmas. So that was really good marketing from Avon.
Yeah.
And anyway, it didn't have 12 dates in anymore by the time we'd finished with it. So she then wrote to me and said, "I can't represent you," which I thought, oh. She said, "But my colleague Juliet Pickering is interested in speaking to you." And I thought, oh. So Juliet invited me down to chat, and I presented sort of various ideas to her. And she said, "Oh, I'm really enthusiastic about this one." And that became The Christmas Promise, that went to #1 on Amazon. And we actually had,
Yeah.
we are such a great team. So we went down together. We had other publishers to see, but we came out of the news building, and I said to Juliet, "I think it's going to be Avon." And so that was kind of where the story began. And I think I had a good roll of the dice in that an author was no longer writing for Avon, who'd been doing seasonal books, and Juliet rocked up with a Christmas book and a summer book, or a part-written summer book. So I think that was my bit of good fortune that came along with.
Well, I think not only good fortune though, Sue. Yeah, I think definitely a space, but also we recognised your wonderful writing. So it's really nice. It's really interesting to hear it from both your perspectives. And we're certainly very glad that you did choose Avon that day. Juliet, I wondered if you could tell us a bit more broadly about how your role as a literary agent works. So obviously you talked to us about how you signed with Sue, but could you tell everyone about how your job works more generally?
Yeah, sure. So beginning with Sue, I would say that every author-agent relationship is case by case. So it's whatever the author primarily, but also the agent, of course, and that kind of connection they have between the two of them. But when I wanted to talk to Sue, I arranged to meet her in person, because I felt that you know, personal connection in real life is so important. I think you have to go with your gut instinct a lot of the time. You have to sit down opposite someone, talk about their work, see how they respond to your thoughts, to make sure you can work editorially long into the future, hopefully. And then we also want to know that we can just trust and respect each other. And then of course comes just enjoying each other's company, having a good chat. You know, you do get to know your authors' lives quite well, and I love that side of it. So you have to make sure that you are beginning on solid ground, because you want this relationship between author and agent to last throughout their writing career, and hopefully that's many decades in most cases. So Sue and I started like that, and it's only kind of gone from strength to strength, I think, as we work through each book. It was a real plan of ours to, you know, give her career a big boost with an exciting new publisher. So when Avon came along, that fell into place, which was wonderful. So, you know, I sit down with authors at the first stage and I talk through what their ambitions are, what their experience has been, if they've previously been published like Sue, and what they want for their future in terms of writing, their stories, their publisher, their readership, that kind of thing. And it's my role to bring the publishing perspective to an author. So they do all the wonderful creative stuff and I do all the pragmatic business stuff, basically.
And how many authors are you working with at the moment, roughly, Juliet?
I have around 50 authors on my list, but they're not all actively writing. So at any one time, there are probably about 15 authors writing, possibly under contract and that sort of thing. So their editor steps in as their kind of key person working on the edits with them, and I take a bit of a back step at that point, but I'm still very much in the chain and in the loop and reading what they deliver and that kind of thing. But some of my authors, like chefs and things, have other priorities, like their restaurants and their businesses, so they're not going to be writing as often as Sue, certainly. And actually I only have currently 2 authors who write 2 books a year, so I think that's the biggest challenge of all, and Sue's certainly one of my hardest working writers.
Yeah, you are prolific, Sue.
Yeah.
Well, I do
I'm
try.
you definitely succeed. I'm just going to mention a little bit how my role fits into this. So as an editor at HarperCollins, I acquire new novels and I look after my existing list of authors, one of which is now Sue. So from my side, if we get a new manuscript sent in from an agent like Juliet, I will have a read of it as quickly as I can. If I like it, I will share it with the rest of the editorial team. I will then share it with maybe a few other people in the business, people from marketing or sales or PR. And if everyone feels strongly about it, I will try to take it forward to an acquisitions meeting, which is where we really pitch the novels that we've got in. We get a sense of whether people like the managing director like it, whether the very senior management feel as though there's a path forward. And if everyone's keen, we then run a profit and loss report, which is where we basically estimate how many sales we think we can get, what kind of level we need to go in at with our first offer. And we put together a kind of vision for the book, and we put together a business case as to why we would like to bring this author to the list. And once that's all done, if that's all been signed off, I will then go to the agent and say, here's my offer. And then we'll probably go into a bit of a negotiation process. That's the fun part. The other side of it is obviously, well, also fun, but the kind of less business side of things is actually getting to know the manuscript. And for me, the most important part is having, like you mentioned, Juliet, that relationship with the writing and also with the author themselves, and building that sense of trust between an editor and an author and an agent. And I think it works best, hopefully you guys feel the same. I feel as though it works best when there's a team and all 3 parties are invested, and we all have that shared same goal of building an author's career. So it is different with every author, but the primary things that I try to do are make us feel like a team, make it really clear what our goals are, and make sure that everyone within the publishing house has that same vision. So although there's a lot of books within, especially somewhere as big as HarperCollins, there's a lot of manuscripts flying around. As an editor, it's my job to make sure that my books get attention and that people other than just me read them, and that all of the authors on my list feel, I suppose, nurtured and that they have a proper publishing home. There was a really interesting discussion on Twitter the other day. I don't know if either of you saw about the word home in terms of publishing, and whether we ought to use that kind of language. And I think it can be argued both ways, but for me, HarperCollins does feel like a home. And I think our authors, although it is a business, as I've said, we do the profit and loss reports and we do negotiation and that sort of thing. It is also a very personal business. And I think we care a lot about our authors and we care about the books. So yeah, from an editor's side, it is you're very invested in the author and the writing, as both of you are. So
It's that
yeah,
collaboration, isn't it? It's all about the 3 of us working together, pushing in the same direction. I'm kind of the point person for Sue and any issues she might have along the way, and you're the point person for the publisher and across all of those colleagues who are helping promote the book and market the book and sell the book into the retailers and that kind of thing. And then we've got to constantly be communicating between the three of us to make sure that everything's moving in the right direction at the right times.
Yeah. And if for whatever reason it's not, I think then we have to communicate. I mean, it has always worked really well with you, Sue, but I think the point is that it is always a collaboration, and it's about that communication. And I think that's how the most successful publishing relationships are formed, if everyone's just on the same page right from the beginning. You mentioned there just a little bit about the campaign, Juliet. So I thought maybe we could talk a little bit about how that works. From my side, obviously, I work really closely with our marketing team and our PR team and the designers to make sure we brief your beautiful covers, just showcasing it again, and make sure that we're promoting those as far and wide as we possibly can. But with you, Sue, I know we're quite collaborative in terms of ideas and creativity. So we quite often have a catch up, pre-publication a few months out and talk about what we might do with the next book and what you can bring to the table and what we can bring. Do you want to tell us a bit about that from your side as an author, how that process feels?
Well, it is a strange mixture, isn't it, being an author, because you spend weeks and months sitting on your own in a room making stuff up, and then you have to put on a whole different hat and become a business person. And my very original background was in banking, so I do see that, and I have been a small business for a long time, and so is my husband, so I do see some of how that works from a loftier perspective, if you like. I know not all authors do, but somebody once said to me that writing a book is a creative act and everything from there on is business, and that's largely true, although we're very creative with advertising campaigns and graphics and things like that. But I do try very much to move from being Sue in her study, where I am now, to being Sue part of the Avon team and part of the Blake Friedman team. And I think it benefits us all. I really cringe and flinch when I hear authors say they've had a row with their editor or their agent, or I see them on Twitter saying something negative, and I go, why would you do that? Because we all get the best out of each other by working together. And so I suppose in a way, I send the book to you, and I'm just so sick of it by then, I never want to see it again. And so when I get to that stage where I feel ill whenever I see it, I know it's time to send it to my editor and agent. And then I have a couple of weeks, and the first couple of days of doing catch-up stuff is wonderful. And then I get really sick at my to-do list, and I want to start writing again, and other ideas are wobbling around. And I maybe do a short story or a serial for a women's magazine like My Weekly. Excuse me. And then you come back to me with your edit notes. So I always read those. I don't know about you, Phoebe, but I always read them like with one eye.
You write them with one eye, Phoebe.
I mean, it is. I know it's nerve-wracking as an author to receive them, but I do get quite nervous as an editor as well. I don't know if you do, Juliet, but just before I send them, and I reread them like 5 times because I just want to check that I'm being clear and that I've understood the book properly and understood what you're trying to do. And then if I don't hear back for a few days, I mean, you're usually very quick, but sometimes you don't hear back straight away, and I just think, oh my God, the author absolutely hates me. So
some authors are quite unaccepting of their edits, maybe not to your face. But I sat next to an author at a lunch who said that she always writes back really rudely and even on the comments on track, I was going to say track and trace then, track thing.
Sign of the times.
That she'll say, "Are you stupid? Did you not read this bleep 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 book?" And then she'll take all that out, having got that out of her system, and write it in reasonable person's language. And I said, but one day you're going to forget to do the reasonable person bit, and it's going to go back like that. But I don't really feel like that. Somebody else said to me that when they feel their editor and or agent is shredding their book, they remember that we're all trying to write the best book I can, which is really nice for me, isn't it? We're trying to write the best book I can. And so I'd never come back to you the same day, I don't think, unless I've got like a really small query. Okay, just before I think of this, I need to know that. But generally I wait and I think about it, and I play with the ideas. There's always something that it's really like the last piece of the jigsaw. I can't think of one with Christmas Wishes. It wasn't quite wasn't a massive edit, was it? But the book I'm working on now, you said, can you make these letters from these instead of from that? And it just fell into place. And so I really value that. And sometimes if I disagree with my editor, Juliet will quietly come on and say, well, for what it's worth, we should consider.
Yeah, I'm the
which is a part of the teamwork you're probably aware of. But it really, the whole thing just really works. And then we have the meeting you spoke of, we have a couple of rounds of edits, and somewhere along the line we have the meeting we spoke of. I'm always working on 3 books. At the moment, I'm promoting Christmas Wishes. I'm editing Under the Italian Sun, and I'm planning my Christmas 2021 book. And so I'm like that the whole time. And we're conversing about all those things at the same time, or in the same time frame, I'll say 6 months. So I write a lot of stuff down to make sure I don't forget it.
Yeah. And what I want to do as the agent is give you enough space to get on with doing all of those 3 books in whichever way you want, and to kind of keep the conversation going with the publisher sometimes when you're busy writing or editing or whatever that might be. I think the piece of advice about not replying immediately is so sensible, and I recommend that to everyone across nearly every decision when it comes from a publisher. So whether that's edits, whether that's the cover, whether that's the narrator of your audiobook, you might listen or look and immediately think that's perfect, they've got it, but a lot of instances that might not happen. So to sleep on it, I think is really vital. I once had an author who I didn't represent, by the way, come back to me on an audiobook narrator and was like, I hate her. And I was like, okay, just sleep on it and come back to me tomorrow. And she did. And she's like, you know what, not so bad, actually, it's fine. I was like, okay. So, there are 2 reactions you might have. There's the instant kind of reactive thing. And then there's the, oh, actually, I thought about it, or I've gone away and I've looked at other covers, or I've listened to other audio narrators. And actually, I can see why the publisher might have chosen this. And it's part of the agent's role to explain that as well. Again, bring the publishing perspective to the conversation with the author and say, this is why your publisher has gone for this look. If you're really unhappy, I push back on your behalf, and that's okay. I'm not going to put you in an awkward position, but also consider perhaps the market or what they're thinking with these colours or whatever it might be.
Yeah, I think a good night's sleep can solve a lot of things, can't it? So you mentioned covers. I think it would be a good time just to touch on the cover process. So from my side, as I mentioned before, after I've read the book, I will brief the cover to our amazing in-house design team quite quickly. Our art director will take a look at it. She might read part of the book, and she might read a key scene, and then she will get to work. And then once we've got something we're happy with, I will email you two and show you what we've come up with. And obviously then if there is anything you want to discuss, we do that, and we might go a little bit back and forth. So your covers, Sue, are designed by the lovely Carrie May, well, illustrated. She's the illustrator, so I think she's done all of yours, hasn't she? Is that right?
Not the first one, not the Christmas one.
Okay.
No.
But the ones following that, and I think actually she's a sort of another part of the team, isn't she, because she has that kind of long relationship with you now, and she very much gets your books and she gets the look that we're going for, and so I think that's been a really nice part of it. Do you have a favorite of your covers if you had to choose one?
One for next year is a huge favorite with me, actually.
Oh, good. Yeah.
Yet. Gosh, I do really like Christmas Wishes, I have to say.
Yeah.
And I like that's the Canadian cover of What's the Little Village Christmas in the UK, Home for Holidays.
Yeah.
It's quite interesting to see, isn't it? You've got the Christmas promise for North America there, and the Christmas promise above from the UK, and what the different markets
It's really
want.
interesting seeing the different markets, because we obviously are in touch with the Canadian team and the US team quite a bit about your publishing, and they do have quite different jacket styles, and it's all about what
Yeah,
works for their market. So I find that quite interesting as well,
yeah.
and it's nice for people to see them showcased behind you. Yeah, I think for us the cover process has been relatively smooth, but
It has. It
yeah,
has. Yeah, I think the Maltese covers have been the hardest, just because I'm such a Maltophile, if there's such a word. Yeah.
Already is my favorite, because I think this might be one of my favorites. I just love the colors.
yeah,
It's so summery.
yeah.
It was kind of the perfect pick me up cover in last year's lockdown. So yeah, it was last spring's lockdown. So yeah, it's a real favorite of mine.
Yeah, that's a lovely
And
one. Yeah.
I weigh in with the Maltese covers. Yeah, but they're not allowed. I think with this book, with Summer on a Sunny Island. Yeah, but they don't have seagulls. Sorry, we can't have seagulls because there are no seagulls in Malta, and it's quite a political hot potato. It's about the hunting of birds, and a pigeon, which they do have, or a sparrow, doesn't have the same.
No, I think pigeons don't give that summery escapist feel. But it's great to know that sort of thing. And actually we all learned something when you said
I
that
just
about the
have to come
seagulls.
back and say delete the seagulls.
Yeah.
Easy job, you know.
That was an easy job. And I suppose the other thing to mention about covers is just what we think about as a publisher, which you touched on, Juliet, which is we think about how the cover will look at retail. So we think about how it might look on a supermarket shelf or in WH Smith or on a Waterstones table. And we also think about how it will look online. So how it will look in thumbnail on Amazon or any other online retailer. They are available. So we kind of take all that into account, and we think about the color palette, and we think about your competitors, who else is writing in this area of the market, what do their covers look like, which ones have been successful, which ones haven't. And so yeah, there's a lot going on in terms of the cover. It's really, really important. Well, it's a sales tool really, but it's also important that you like it as the author and that you like it, Juliet. So yeah, I
I'm
feel
just going
like
to do another holding up. I'm just going to
oh,
say,
nice.
when you have as many books as this, it's really good to have some kind of brand recognition.
Yeah.
And it's hard sometimes to talk about things like branding when you are creative, you're an author, you don't want to talk in kind of business speak, but you want someone to walk into a shop, be looking for Sue's next book, and instantly see something recognizable. So it's wonderful that we have the same illustrator, the same style, the same kind of font, all those sorts of things. It really helps us to keep those readers coming back.
Yeah, that's a really good point as well. So moving on then, Sue, could you tell us a little bit about what your daily writing life is like? I don't know if that's changed in lockdown. We're recording in 2020, so things are a bit bonkers. But yeah, what's a typical day in the life of a writer from your
Well,
side?
on some points it hasn't changed, because I still come to the same. My commute is still walk from the shower to the landing, across the landing to the chair. So I start early. I get up at 6:30. I bathroom, study, a cup of tea, study, and I do all the businessy stuff. A lot of social media, a lot of emails, and go down and get another cup of tea, and I start to work on whether I'm writing, editing, or like at the moment, because Christmas Wishes came out in ebook last Thursday, and comes out in paperback next Thursday, that I'm doing whatever I need to do for that. And I do sometimes have, particularly more in summer, an early walk. So then I don't come to my desk till about 7:45 maybe. And in normal times, I do 3 or 4 gym classes a week, dancing and yoga, which I just got 2 of them back when we went back into lockdown, and I've lost them again. So I'm walking a lot again. I'll walk after this event, and I listen to audiobooks, and then I work all afternoon till 6 p.m. And that's my normal sort of day. Of course, in more normal times, we have publishing parties to go to, we have meetings, I go on writing retreats, and I go on research trips. which I was very lucky to get the research trip in for Christmas wishes when we had happier times. And my friend, who is British Swedish, said to me, why don't you set a book in Sweden and we can go and stay with Mum? Excellent. And my only task was to book a hotel in Stockholm for 3 days, and I booked the wrong one. So it's as well that she organised everything else. But I do love my research trips and my writing breaks away, so I have missed those. But of course, we were blessed with some wonderful weather during the first lockdown and the early period after lockdown. So I did sit in the garden a lot. And I also built a Mediterranean garden as my lockdown project.
Wow, that's amazing. I need to see photos of this Mediterranean garden. But yeah, I think it's really interesting to hear about your daily routine, and it's so important to get up and go for a walk, isn't it, at the moment, because we're all so sedentary at home. But yeah, so thank you for that. Juliet, would you be able to just quickly talk us through what your day involves as a literary agent? Because I think people might be quite keen to hear that as well.
Yeah, of course. So my day is largely emails and meetings, like yours, Phoebe, I imagine. So I will start pretty much as soon as I, like Sue, am kind of showered and dressed. I have a little toddler, so I just pick up as and when I can, and then I deal with things like sharing covers with authors, maybe editing a proposal. I tend to edit and read at kind of any greater extent in the evenings and at weekends, so that's all done outside work time. I'm talking to my colleagues all the time. We have an agency meeting every week where we check in on what we're doing, new clients, new deals, new submissions, that kind of thing. I might be negotiating on a new deal, so I might have had an offer on something and be working out the terms with the publisher for our authors. I'll be calling my authors and giving them variously good news, occasionally bad news, but hopefully good, and just checking in on those ones who are writing or due to deliver. This week I've had a really lovely publicity and marketing meeting on a book that's about Vogue, which is published in the spring. So that was really fun to talk about, and that is a whole different set of press and marketing contacts that the publisher's going to Sue's books, for example. So there's lots of kind of information sharing and working out what's going on for each author at this whatever stage they're at with their books. So yeah, there's no kind of set routine to a day. All I can say is that yeah, there's a lot of emails, a lot of conversations flying about, but it keeps it really interesting because it's such a variety of stuff that I'm working on. And how about you, Phoebe? What does your day involve?
Well, it does involve quite a lot of emails and meetings, as you said. So it's nice to do something like this actually, because it's a bit different. But yeah, it's a lot of meetings with my team. I work across 2 teams at Harper at the moment, so it's double the amount of meetings. But we have design meetings with our art teams who are looking at covers. We have editorial teams where we're discussing new submissions. We have progress meetings where we're looking at whether the book is on track to go to print on time and meet the critical path. We have creative meetings with marketing and publicity, and we have author meetings. I am really missing the publishing parties, I won't lie. I love those. I love having the free Prosecco. I love getting to know the authors and agents in person. So I'm hoping those will come back after we're out of this situation. Because overall, I think my job is quite a sociable one. We are quite a sociable business as publishers. So usually there's a fair bit of in-person interaction as well. I might be having lunch with an agent or lunch with an author. So all that's kind of been relegated to Zoom. And then there's a lot of reading as well, but most of my reading is done outside of working hours, to be honest, because there just aren't enough hours in the day to read the submissions. So I tend to do that at the evenings and the weekends. But, I'm lucky that I get to read for a living, really. That's what I tell myself whenever I'm feeling a bit, a bit stressed
Yeah.
out.
And we're lucky to have been able to continue through all of
Yep.
this year, that people still want to read, that we
Yep.
can still work, so you can still write, you
Mhm.
can still represent, you can still publish. We are
Yeah.
so lucky to be in this industry,
Yep.
and such a supportive, friendly industry as well. Like, we're all talking to each other all the time, whether we might be working together on a project in the immediate moment or not. And I think that's a real boost as well, isn't it?
Yeah, that's so true.
Mm.
I thought we could just quickly touch on advice. So I think a lot of people watching might be writers themselves or wanting to get published or want to get an agent. So Sue, starting with you, what advice would you give to someone who is wanting to write and publish a novel?
Educate yourself is always one of my prime tips. We come out of school, unless we do an English or a creative writing degree, we come out of school with a level of literacy. And for some reason, there's this perception that going on courses is a cheat. Like, and I don't understand it, because dancers and artists and musicians and singers, they spend years, literally years, in education and doing practice at the same time. So I'm really not sure why writers aren't included in that, but it doesn't mean that you do have to go to university or do an open university course, distance learning. There's loads of things. There's courses through magazines. I used to teach on one, and online schools. There's conferences and classes in normal times at your local education authority. There's books. I've written one, actually, writing guides. And there's just so many ways, and not just not those massive things, but the small things, like the bookseller puts out a free email every day telling you what's going on with publishing, and you can find out where editors and agents are going and what they're looking for. And I think that's just such an underused facility. I'd always say persist. I do believe that the name for an author who doesn't give up is published. And my niece actually is also with HarperCollins as Nikki Moore and Ella Albright, and all the interviews she's doing at the moment around her new book, she keeps saying, well, my aunt Sue Moorcroft told me not to give up, so I didn't, and here I am. So I feel like, see, I was right about that. And I would also say learn about publishing as well as writing, because so many people write a book and go, well, what now? I had a friend's daughter talking to me about this week. She's entered into an agreement to publish the book. Somebody's publishing it for her and she's paying them to do it. And I felt like, well, if we'd have had this conversation earlier, I could have helped you a lot more. She just almost answered an advert. And I think there's so much more to learn. All those conferences and everything are the way to learn. And you can go to conferences and get to one-to-ones with editors and agents. The Romantic Novelists Association's conference is great for that, but also places like York and loads of them, Winchester, they do one-to-ones, so you can send some work in and then make an appointment to see that agent or editor and get some really, really useful feedback. And so I think that's all my tips, really.
Thank you. And yeah, that's a really good point actually about being careful online, because there are places called vanity publishers, who are asking you for your money to publish your book, and it shouldn't work that way. So we pay you, the publisher pays the author, rather than the other way around. So it's just good to be careful about things like that. Juliet, what about you? Would you give any advice to anyone wanting to sign with a literary agent?
Sure, I think it's take questions. I think Sue's advice to do some research on publishing and look at kind of comparable authors, go into a bookshop and look around, or if you can't do that physically right now, then go online, look at what books are kind of in the bestseller charts. Can you think of a couple of comparisons for your own writing that would be really helpful when pitching your book? It's really helpful just for us as agents to have a really strong sense of what your story is from your cover letter when you come to us with your submission. So anything you can kind of equip yourself with, whether that's comparing it to books or films or popular television series or that kind of thing, it really helps us get a strong sense of your story. And when you go and meet an agent, they will want to talk about editorial feedback. So, take your own thoughts. Don't be scared. Like, that's such a prime opportunity to sit down with an agent and grill them on what they can do for you, talk about your ambitions, all the stuff that I mentioned when I first met Sue that we discussed as well. And don't, I just hope that people don't feel too intimidated by it as well. I want to just make very clear that we're regular human beings and we're not special people, and we really want to find good books. So we're here to fight your corner and be your champion.
I think we're having some internet issues. Can you still hear me, Sue?
I can see and hear you, but Juliet's frozen.
Okay. I think we got most of what she said, and that was a really lovely note about championing her authors. And I would say as a publisher as well, we are definitely here for you in that respect. Oh, I think we've lost Juliet. Hopefully she will rejoin. But yeah, I think publishers are exactly the same as agents, and they want to find new authors and they want to find you readers. So although I know that sometimes the websites can look a bit intimidating, I was talking to an author the other day who said the websites are just terrifying. Then, you know, I know they can look a bit like that, but we are all people and we would love to hear from you. We want to publish new authors. So just before, I'm not sure if Juliet will come back, but just before we end, Sue, do you want to tell us about what's next for you as a writer? You've mentioned Christmas Wishes, which is out on the 12th of November in paperback. You're going to be able to pick it up in WH Smith, all of the supermarkets, which are still open during the pandemic. And of course, you can pick it up online. The ebook is out now and it's discounted from today. So it's only 99p, which is a total bargain. So that's Christmas Wishes. But then what's next on the horizon for you, Sue?
Under the Italian Sun, I have done some of my edits, Phoebe.
Oh, good. Good to hear.
It's going quite well. Excuse me. Yeah, so any reader who has already read One Summer in Italy, I've returned to the same place, the same small town in Umbria, Italy, which is the area where I go every year on my writing retreat. And it's a beautiful, rugged area right in the middle, the green heart of Italy. And it's a bit of a mystery where this idea came from, but I decided I wanted to write about somebody who knew there was somebody who had quite an unusual name and knew there was somebody with exactly the same name and wanted to find out why. So the whole book really revolves around that and her name is Zia Lucia Costa Chalmers, and she goes to, when she finds some letters from her grandparents and an old friend of her mother's, it makes her aware of some of her mother having, or there being two people with her mother's name as well, Victoria Chalmers. And so she sets out to solve both of these conundrums, and it takes her to Italy.
It does, and I absolutely love her name. It's so beautiful, and I think the whole book is so fantastic. It's very escapist, and it's just what I needed going into lockdown. It's one of the most recent things I read, and it was just the perfect escape from these times. So that will be out next summer, and we are really looking forward to it. I think we will leave it there. This has been so interesting to talk to you, Sue. Thank you. And thank you to Juliet. I know that her internet's gone, but it was great to hear everything that she had to say earlier on in the panel. And yeah, thank you very much to everyone who has been watching. You can buy Christmas Wishes now in ebook, and you can buy the paperback from Thursday the 12th. Oh, I think Juliet has just re-emerged. So I'll let her back in. Hi, Juliet.
Sorry, guys.
No, don't worry. We were just closing up because Sue's just been telling us about her next novel, and I was just saying some goodbyes and saying thank you to you in absentia. But now you're here, you can say a quick goodbye yourself if you'd like to.
Well, thanks so much for this chat. I'm sorry to miss the very last part, but I'm sure it was superb.
No problem. It's one of the perils of living in 2020, slight internet issues. But no, thank you both for giving up your time and talking to me about the writer's journey. I hope it was useful for everyone watching, and many more brilliant Sue Moorcroft books to come. Watch this space. Okay.
Thanks
Here's one there. Yeah. Woo, upside down.
We all do Christmas wishes goodbye. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you all. Bye.